Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast, where we explore the extraordinary world of organ transplants. I'm your host, BJ Odom. Each week we share inspiring stories and we introduce you to remarkable individuals sharing their own transplant stories. Be sure to support us by posting a 5-star review and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Have a transplant story you'd like to share or have comments about the podcast? Love to hear from you at giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can connect with us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast, as we welcome you to episode 42. This week, we bring you an incredible story of love and the power of family. Meet Ronna, a kidney transplant survivor who did everything right, eating well, staying active, and living a healthy lifestyle. But a routine medical exam for life insurance uncovered a shocking truth. She was in renal failure. As her world turns upside down, one person never hesitated. Her sister, stepping up without question. She was first in line to donate a kidney. But their journey was far from easy. From the emotional highs and lows of the transplant process, Ronna's time on dialysis, the experience not only tested their strength, but put the two together like you would never imagine. So as we kick things off, let's meet Ronna. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Okay, I am currently 53. I live with my husband in beautiful Southern California in the midst of fireland and rainstorms and everything else that we've had recently. My story began in 2021. I am very involved in the JFNA, which is the Jewish Federation of North America. And I wanted my gift to follow my passing. God forbid that day came. I wanted my gift to be given for life. And by doing that, you have to set up a life insurance policy, just a small one. We already had a major one for our son. But we needed just a small couple $100,000, not a big deal. COVID happens and things get delayed. So finally, early spring of 2023, the nice woman from the life insurance company comes to my house and takes my blood and says, "Thank you very much." And I signed the papers and figured that was it. Needless to say, I was an avid workout fiend. I ate a plant-based, gluten-free diet. I ran marathons several times a year. I would lift weights a couple times a week. I would indoor spin, and I would run about 4 miles a day.
Wow.
So I was very active, always in shape, always energetic. I'm actually a nutritionist by trade, and I kept this amazingly clean home as far as food went. So who would have thought anything was wrong? Well, I started having some symptoms in early 2023 after she took the blood. Things like I couldn't sleep laying down. I had to sleep sitting up because if I laid down, I felt like somebody was choking me, like I couldn't breathe. So I would sit up. And then if I would lay down, I would also feel like there would be bugs all over my body because I couldn't stop itching. My weight was dropping, not on purpose. And my face still looked swollen, like puffy, where my eyes were kind of puffy and my hands were puffy and my feet were puffy. But I'm not a complainer. I get back on that treadmill and I continue to run and live my life. About 8 weeks after taking the blood test, I get a letter from the life insurance company that says, I'm sorry to inform you, we do not give life insurance policies to people with end-stage renal disease. We have contacted your healthcare provider with this information. I looked at my husband and I said, what is this? And he said, oh, it's got to be a mistake. And he said, okay. He said, call and see what they say. They called. They said, no, we've ran it several times. This was not a mistake. You need to see your doctor. So I am a Kaiser patient. And Kaiser then, the middle of June, sends me an appointment to see a nephrologist. Okay. I never saw a nephrologist, didn't really think I ever would see a nephrologist. Nobody in my family has ever had a kidney issue. So I said to my husband, do you think I should go? He said, just go. You are totally fine. There is nothing wrong with you. You're a little crazy, but that's fine. There's nothing really, really wrong with you. He's like, they're just going to run labs and tell you that it was like a false positive. I said, okay, I don't know. I just get this, I'm getting this weird vibe. Like, I just don't know. I don't really want to go. I don't love going to doctors no matter what. Like I could be, bleeding to death and I don't want to go to a doctor. Just put a Band-Aid on it. It'll go away. Well, I go to this office and my blood pressure is very high. And I was already on blood pressure medication. That was the only medication I'd ever taken was blood pressure medication. And I go, and my blood pressure is high and the nurse doesn't say anything. Okay. She didn't even seem alarmed by how high it was. The doctor comes in, very, very nice woman comes in and we start to talk and she starts asking if I'm having any of these symptoms. Things like, are you itchy? Are you able to lay down and sleep? She's looking at my hands and my feet saying that they're swollen. She said, do you have any metal taste in your mouth? And I said, that's so funny. Yeah, recently food doesn't taste good. Things don't taste right. And she said, and how about your brain? Like, do you feel cloudy? Do you feel foggy? And I said, yeah, in fact, sometimes I even forget conversations that I had had the night before with my husband or my son. And then the next morning, they'll ask me a question regarding the conversation. And I have completely look at them like I have no idea what you're talking about. And then my husband said I started slurring sometimes at night, my speech. But he said it would come and go and he wasn't that concerned about it. I said, okay. So she asked if I had any slurrings and I mentioned that my husband said I did. She said, okay. And she said, have you seen your lab numbers? And I said, no, I haven't. I have no idea what you're even talking about, really. I get this letter. I told her I got the letter from the life insurance policy, but that's all I knew. So she pulls up on the computer and she starts to show me my creatinine and my GFR. Well, this is July 6th of 2023. My creatinine was already at a 3.5 and my GFR was already at a 15. I had absolutely no idea. When I mean no idea, I probably turned 15 colors just sitting in her office that day.
Now, did you know that those were high numbers though? Or were you like, because I remember when they used to talk these numbers to me, I was like oblivious to what they were really saying or what they were meaning. Now I understand them. But at the time, did you go, oh, that doesn't sound like bad numbers?
Well, I was like, well, actually, my response to her was, well, I've seen these medications on TV that people can take for kidney disease. And she goes, yeah, you can take those if, you would come to me when your GFR was at, a 40 or a 50, but not at a 15. And she looked at me straight in the face and she said, first of all, we need to start dialysis. And second of all, you need a kidney transplant to stay alive.
Oh, wow. Those were like the
like,
first words that you heard at the first appointment.
I literally didn't, I mean, coming from family members who have had transplants, the word wasn't shocking to me. I had knowledge of it and of what it meant. But the fact that I was sitting in her office, with the most perfect BMI, the perfect weight, the perfect everything, like, who are you talking to? Because you must be talking to somebody else, because this couldn't possibly be me. I'm like, I ran 5 miles before I got here. So who are you talking to? And she said, you're still able to run? And I said, yeah. She said, that's remarkable, because with numbers like this, you should not even be able to get out of bed most of the days. I was like, well, I don't know, but I'm doing it. So I said to her, well, what do we do now? And she said, well, we start an evaluation to move you to UCLA to get a kidney transplant, or at least put on the UNOS list. And I said, well, I'm leaving for an Alaskan cruise in 4 days. Can it wait? And she said, well, it's waited this long. I guess it can. She said, but here is the diet that you need to follow from now until we meet again, which was, 32 ounces of liquids, 3 ounces of protein, no dairy, no phosphorus, taking phosphorus binders, the whole slew that goes with it all. And I said, okay, and she, of course, then adds in, and absolutely no sodium. Well, how do you survive? Like, I was a high protein, jugging water kind of person. I didn't know how to live this life. And we went on a cruise. It was probably the hardest 2 weeks of my life. I sat staring at glaciers, thinking to myself, am I going to make it through this? Like, I have a kid. He's 18, 19. How am I going to watch him graduate college?
How are you feeling? I mean, was it worried, or were you starting to feel sick during the cruise, or was it from worriedness, or was it from the actual kidney itself?
It was actually just anxiety. I mean, okay. I thought it was anxiety. What I thought was anxiety was actually toxins.
Okay.
But I didn't know the difference because, again, I didn't like doctors. I didn't go to doctors often. I'm just one of those people that, I felt if you go to a doctor, they're going to tell you you're sick. But if you don't go to the doctor, maybe you won't be sick. Mind over matter, right?
Yes. And I know a lot of people that believe that same thing as you do.
Yeah. And for a lot of things, it definitely works. There are people that, they get a cough and they're, at the doctor, at the urgent care, getting prescriptions. Well, I, took Tylenol. That was what I took. I was just that person. And I ate really, really well. And I thought I was taking really good care of my body. And I actually had asked her one day, I said, is there anything I could have done? And she said, absolutely not. It was completely congenital. This is just how you were brought into the world. And I said, okay. So to the part of the story that's interesting is I was in an area called Juneau, walking around by myself because I just needed space from my husband and my son, who I absolutely adore, but I just needed my time.
Now, when you say Juneau too, this is on the cruise, right? This is Juneau, yes. Alaska. Okay.
In Alaska.
I just wanted to clarify that because I figured this is where we're going.
Yes. So I'm walking and, it's gloomy and not exactly the weather I needed to be in the moment. And I hadn't told many people because it was only 4 or 5 days old, the news. My mom knew, my mother-in-law knew, very few people knew. And I get a phone call, and it's my sister. And I was already crying. And she said, "Stop. We're going to fix this. I'm going to give you my kidney." She said, "You are one of the most generous, loving, caring people, and I couldn't let anything happen to you." She said, "I already hooked up to UCLA's line, and I'm already starting the paperwork." And this was in July. And I said, "No, you can't do that. You have your child too." She said, "No, I'm going to do this, and we're going to solve it together." Well, she did, and I came home and I started the evaluation at Kaiser. And I'm very fortunate. I don't work. So I literally got every one of the tests, and those checklists are very long.
Oh, yes, they are.
I did it in 10 days. There would be days I would go to Kaiser at 8:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't come home until 4:30 in the afternoon, because I would just do back-to-back testing all day long. And I was on a mission to get to UCLA. So I did. I got an appointment. Somehow, by the grace of God, I got a cancellation in September. First, it was supposed to be in January. The original appointment was scheduled for January. Then they moved it to October. And before I knew it, I got a cancellation that there was an opening in September. So I went for my evaluation, and the only thing that worried them was that I had squamous cell carcinomas for 15 years. And as some people do or do not know, cancers grow, especially skin cancers grow very rapidly with the immunosuppressant drugs.
Oh, yeah. I can vouch for that.
Exactly. So if you've already had it for 15 years, and I've had hundreds of Mohs all over my body because of it, that was their biggest issue. So they wanted one more. They wanted a full body PET scan to make sure I had nothing underlying anywhere else. And I said, "Fine, I'll do it." I went ahead. I did it. I cleared it. So they said, "Okay." So they listed me on UNOS. And my sister at that time was still going through the process. And I was still adamant about going on dialysis. I absolutely did not want to be put on dialysis. To me, that was like an absolute non-negotiable. I was not going to do that. Well, unfortunately, my sister got denied the first round because she was on a medication for bones that causes protein in the urine. Well, if you have any amount of protein in your urine, UCLA automatically denies you. So she went to her internist, and he said, "This medication is causing it. Let's stop and repeat it in 30 days. She did repeat it in 30 days, but I was getting sicker. And now I was getting so sick that I was having trouble getting up out of bed in the morning. And all the symptoms, as my husband would describe it, I looked gray, swollen and gray. And I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was just not doing well. And my husband finally looked at me one night. He said, "You need to go on dialysis." He said, "You are going to not wake up one morning." He said, "Because I can see it in your face." He said, "You are getting sicker, and it is taking longer with your sister. And what if she ends up not being able to donate? You have to go on dialysis, or you're not going to survive this." And I said, fine, I'll do it, but I want nothing to, I can't even handle the concept of it. So I'm not going to any of the classes. I'm not doing any of it. He said, I will go with you. We will do it together. I agreed. At that time I weighed 93 pounds, and my doctor felt it was dangerous to do hemodialysis because my arms were so thin that to put the fistula in would just be drastic to my arm.
Okay.
So we did peritoneal at home, which was no better. I mean, having a catheter in your stomach is not a whole, well, it's definitely not much better. But I did it, and I'll never forget. I went into the surgery crying. I came out of the surgery crying. It took me days to accept that this thing was in my stomach. Days. And then you have to go for 2 weeks, and they train you how to do it. And my husband, he was the one that was going to hook it up every night. And so he sat and he learned how to do it. And we, as a team, we did it. I sat for 9 hours every night hooked up to a machine. Probably the worst thing I've ever gone through. The most humbling experience of my life. Vanity became completely out the window. It was like it became sweat outfits, and that was it. And the bigger the baggier, because I couldn't imagine letting I was so emotional about having this catheter in my stomach, even though I knew it was keeping me alive. It was so hard to accept.
Now, now I'm going to ask you a question here, because, you had the skin cancers, and obviously, you had them. Did you ever have them cut and removed before these problems existed with your kidneys?
Oh, I've had skin cancer, squamous cell carcinomas for 15 years.
See, so I would think you would be somewhat humbled by that. So I'm really kind of surprised at I can really see how that is a humbling experience to be on dialysis and to be hooked to a machine. But the vanity part, okay, just continue. My head was.
You know what? I know what you're saying, but I always felt like the skin cancers went away. This was like this permanent tube sticking out of your stomach. And, every day you wake up every morning and there's this machine sitting in your room, and, the boxes of supplies that get delivered to your house are just endless. And it is just, you are overwhelmed with kidney dialysis everywhere in your house.
Well, I remember, like, even myself, I had a heart transplant, and then I ended up getting a kidney transplant. Now, I did the regular dialysis where you go to a center.
The hemodialysis, yeah.
But for me, that was an experience also, that it was like, believe me, when I had the heart transplant, I had to go to the hospital. Okay, I could handle that. But yeah, there was something about being hooked to that machine 3 days a week. It became a job, even though I worked another job besides that. I was still doing radio at the time. I did a morning radio show, and then I went in and did this. It does really play psyche with your mind. There's no doubt about that.
And now, do you have a scar from the fistula still?
Believe it or not, I got my kidney in 2015. I didn't get a fistula. I got a graft, and my graft is still in, and it still thrills today. And of course, I had some problems with donor-specific antibodies where they needed to give me both plasma and plasmapheresis and forget the name of the other one. There's 2 phereses. And they would always use, which was amazing, because they said, "Oh, we're going to have to put something, in your chest." And I go, "Hey, I got this graft. It's still working." And they'd feel it. And they go, so whenever I did the photopheresis, they would just use the graft. I mean, it was like I was back on dialysis again. I'd go to the hospital for photopheresis. Yeah, it was photo, and then it was plasma. But I would do them, and they would use my graft instead of, putting a port in me.
That was actually very lucky.
I
Let me
know.
just, all I can tell you is my veins by now, I'm 10 and a half months out, but my veins are shot.
Yeah. Well, my veins are shot,
So-
but that graft is still working like a humming bee,
That-
let me tell you.
And then, yeah. And so where was I? So I was on dialysis. It did get a little better. We started having, my husband is very handy, let's just say, when it comes to machinery and hooking things up. So he found a way. We have like a room that looks like kind of like a theater with like theater chairs in it.
Yeah.
And it's closer to a restroom and to the kitchen. So I would go in there and we would hook up every evening, and he would go to bed and I would stay in there, because that way I didn't have to wake him up if I needed to use the restroom, which was rare, but sometimes. And I could go to the kitchen and get a snack if I needed. I felt more independent. And
Now-
I think that was a big part for me. Was I've always been very independent.
Now, like
And
I
the
said,
idea of being dependent on somebody, oof, that was hard.
now since I never did, I get the two confused all the time. But now, could you unhook from that and go to the kitchen, or did you have to bring the tubes with you to the kitchen?
It's a big machine, like a computer, and it's on a rolling cart. And he hooked up an extension cord so it would be long enough so I could roll it into the kitchen. I could roll it into the laundry room. I could roll it into the restroom. I was able to be more independent and move around with it.
And this is why
Because
us
yes.
transplant patients give the biggest kudos, to our caregivers, because they do amazing things while we go through some of these situations.
And his dad had a liver transplant and unfortunately passed away from complications. And it was a lot. It was like reliving all over again. It's there are days he'd be frustrated with me. And there's days I would be frustrated with him. So, but yes, it has to be a team effort. I could not have done dialysis alone. He would get up every morning and I would unplug the machine from my body, but then he would take the bags and he would empty them and he would take care of all of it.
Now let me throw
before he went to run his company.
Now let me throw you a curveball here with you having transplants in your family, because we talked before we started recording today. Did that help, or do you think that hurt and scared you more?
A little of both. Basically, it gave me the knowledge of transplant life. But it also gave me the hardship of knowing how dangerous these meds are that we take every day to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to share with you that in November, hit a wall and ended up in rejection. And currently today, I am still in rejection. The last biopsy and the last two tests they do called Prospera shows markers for rejection. Both show that I am still in rejection, and we will wait until tomorrow to find out if I am still in rejection, and then I will be back in the hospital again next week for another biopsy and another round of high-dose steroids, which I spent 8 days all the way through Thanksgiving in the hospital on high-dose steroids for rejection, which definitely is not a very fun experience, especially when you've never been diabetic and all of a sudden your blood sugar's at 400.
Yeah.
Again, these medications are dangerous and they're poisonous. And so to answer your question, having family members who are no longer here and knowing and watching how they died and knowing that it was causes of the medications, side effects of the medications that are supposed to keep you alive. It's kind of, people say transplant's a cure. No, transplant is not a cure. And that was the first thing my transplant team taught me.
That was one of the first things they were. Yeah, that's one of the first things I heard too.
Yeah, we are not curing you. You are not cured. You will forever have chronic kidney disease. You will forever be in stage 3 of chronic kidney disease. We will do everything to keep you out of stage 4 and 5, but there is no guarantee. Getting my sister's kidney gave me a better chance with a little longer of a lifespan, hopefully. But again, I'm already in rejection, possibly on the 3rd round of rejection, and it's scary.
Yes.
Rejection is hard. And, I started to work out again, and then all of a sudden I was like, why am I so tired? And why is my blood pressure so high? And, why am I swelling and having all these issues? And well, I was in rejection and we didn't realize it. So I haven't had a normal creatinine in quite a few months again, which is very bothersome and has a lot of anxiety with it.
I can see why.
So yeah, I've been as high as a 2 already for my creatinine, which we all know at 10 months, you should be at a 1, 1, 1, 2.
Yeah. I'm like 2015, I had mine. I have been up to, the low 2s, but it's still would hopefully be lower, but I've been 10 years out too.
And your creatinine's still at a 2? Or no?
Right now it runs between a 1.5 and a 1.7.
But they've done baseline. That is your baseline.
Yeah, my baseline is probably 1.5, 1.7, kind of like teeter-totters in there. But it did jump up to, and that got me nervous, but they got it back down right away.
Yeah, for some reason, mine hasn't gone back down. We're hoping eventually, and my team says it's okay. You can have a 1.5. You can have a 1.6 as a baseline, as long as we know there is no rejection going on.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, kidney transplant patients don't have the perfect creatinine and may never have a perfect creatinine again. I was very blessed the first couple months, and my creatinine, I got as low as a 0.8, which, was huge. We were celebrating.
Yeah, that's like, bring out the streamers.
Yeah, literally. And now I'm 10 and a half months, and yeah, it's all quite a challenge. Every day is a challenge. And some days I have good days, and some days I have not such good days.
Well, I appreciate you also for coming on and, sharing your journey, because every journey is important. And I am learning through this podcast, which I already pretty well knew, every journey is different. In fact, that's one of the things they told me. I go, oh, what's life expectancy? Oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? When I had the heart transplant and when I had the kidney transplant. And they said, no two are ever the same. No two cases, no two bodies. No two bodies are ever made up the same.
Sometimes frustrate you. For me, that's I'm a planner. I get things accomplished. I make lists. I check things off every day. I am that person. And living now in a very unknown world, that's how I look at it.
Yes.
Where I am still doing weekly labs every Monday, sometimes twice a week. And the unknown and that level of anxiety is really, it is hard some days. It is really hard to smile and get up and walk outside and go, oh, life is great.
Yeah, I have those days too. I think everybody does, but I hate to, because this is your story, but I think one of the advantages that I have, which I try to explain sometimes to people, because they go, oh, how did you go through all this? How did you do all of this? And I think someone like you that had been healthy, had always been energetic and worked out, ate right, you didn't expect anything like this curveball to come into your life. Where myself, I was born with congenital heart disease. So when I was 22 months old, had my first open heart surgery, and there was times, that I never learned to run. I mean, yeah, I walked, and even today I walk very slow. I walk slower than anybody else, but never learned to run, never learned to throw a ball. And so that was kind of my life. So I think in a way, being sick all my life was somewhat a blessing through this whole thing, because now maybe I don't expect as much. I don't know. I don't understand. I'm writing a book now, and it's like therapy when you're working with someone who's your ghostwriter, because we have really opened up a bunch of cans of worms around here in the last few weeks.
Oh, I'm sure. I can't even imagine.
It's better than therapy.
Wow. Therapy. Yeah. It is, yeah, it's definitely, the one thing that I don't know if you get this, but I get this often, and maybe it's a female, I don't know, but I will get friends who know what I've been through now, right? They will look at me and they will just blatantly say, God, you look so good. It's as though you didn't even have a transplant. Like, you're not even sick anymore.
I don't get that you're not even sick anymore, but I do get, oh man, I get both. I get, oh man, for everything you've been through in life, you look amazing. And I get the, oh my God, you would never know you had a heart transplant. You would have never known you had a kidney transplant. You look so normal. I go, well, that's kind of why I went and got the transplant. So I could be somewhat normal again.
So I could get on an airplane and go somewhere, yes. But, there's the ramifications of having a transplant, even, I don't know about how, because you're so far out now with food for you, but like for me, there's so many restrictions still. Yes, now I can drink all the water I want, which is great. But they still want me on a limited amount of protein, because protein, as we know, is very hard on the kidneys. And they still don't want me eating a lot of, not that I eat processed foods, but anything like that, anything with high sodium, nothing raw, no sushi, nothing off like a buffet or a salad bar, or any place where anything has been opened and left out. There are a lot of restrictions, and I take a lot of medications, and I have a lot of lab work and a lot of testing and a lot of anxiety. And when friends look at you and they're like, oh, you're all better. I love that. You're all better. No, I'm not all better. I just found a better way to live life right now. And yes, they do tell me, which again is very frustrating, that every single case is different. Every single case.
Yep.
And no two organs are the same, and no two bodies take the organs the same. And for me, like I said, that's frustrating. It's a frustrating way to live. Not like I said to somebody yesterday, at least when I was on dialysis, it was a very predictable life. I knew exactly what my routine was.
And now
I knew exactly what I was doing.
And now it's like day to day for you. So yeah, I see the difference there. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Now it's like, am I going, when I ended up in rejection, it was like, how did this happen? And I looked at the doctor, did I do this? And he said, again, you did not do this. Your body is fighting the kidney. I said, but it's not supposed to, like, this is my sister's kidney. It's supposed to like love each other, right? And it's like, no, it doesn't quite work like that.
Where's that sister love? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's the other issue is, I can't express enough. I wish we had more living donors, because my sister in 2 weeks was back to her life. And she's going to be 57 this month. We are 4 years apart. And it literally 2 weeks and she was back as though nothing. She's had all her labs. Everything is good. She is in great health. Thank God. And they don't ever foresee a reason for her to have any issue.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is it is tough having a living donor is phenomenal, but it is hard when it is a sibling or when it is a child to a parent or a parent to a child. There is, the donor takes it, everything that happens to me, my sister, I should say, my donor, my sister, takes everything that happens to me personally as though it's happening to her as well.
Well, that's that real sister love. But I mean.
So when I went into rejection, I had to tell her. And she took it very hard. I didn't realize how hard she was going to take it. But it was as though what she gave me, the gift she gave me, was not cooperating. And it's got to be something she could have done. Yeah,
and there's nothing that she did wrong, and
no,
she just got to get that into her head for sure, because what she did was an awesome thing, and she did nothing at all wrong. And you're thankful that she's healthy right now too.
Thankful and grateful for her every day, and it definitely strengthens a relationship. I mean, you definitely become more than just. It's not just your sister anymore. How's that?
Well, okay.
It's literally the person that saved your life.
A recent show, I had a half sister donate part of her liver to her half sister, and they hadn't seen each other since their father's funeral 30 years prior. And, because it was it was two different families, really, family one and family two. But now she is close, to her half sister, and they communicate all the time. And there was 30 years that, besides seeing each other at their father's funeral, hadn't communicated at all. And I think that is such a beautiful thing. And people I've talked to on this podcast that have donated kidneys to either someone they know or had them donated from someone they know, it seems like that bond has grown to no ever ending.
It definitely, yes. I have a room in my house now that is basically her room. She lives in San Diego, which is not too far from me. It's a couple hours away. And she comes on weekends all the time, which she never did before. Now she comes and just hangs out, just even for the night.
Cool.
It's a very different relationship. That's for sure. But yeah, it's living donation is something I only pray more people would look into and not be afraid of.
Now,
because too many people, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, what surprises me most too, while I've been doing this podcast, is the people that I talk to that just sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with no one on their radar who needs a kidney. And they go, I'm going to donate my kidney. I'm going to check into this first thing in the morning. They do, and they donate the kidney. I had a lady on this podcast that donated a kidney, didn't care what color this person was, didn't care their religion, didn't care who they voted for president. They just wanted to give a kidney. And now, so the lady says, I have one kidney that voted blue, and I have now another kidney that voted red, and they are the best of friends.
It's all of that. It's a gift. The statistic says there are 13 people in the country that die every day waiting for a kidney. And it's a really sad statement that, I met a lot of people at UCLA because you spend quite a lot of time there in the beginning. And, there was people I met, 10 years on dialysis waiting for a kidney, 10 years.
I know a lady who's almost 16.
And still no kidney.
It's just,
did she get one?
No, not yet. And she has a lot of antibody issues, and that's her problem from blood transfusions, childbirth, and things that have went on in her life. The antibodies are just,
wrecking it. Yeah.
Wrecking the whole.
Can't get a match.
Yeah. That's why I'm really hoping nothing that I know of positively, but I know they're working on it. If they can ever come up with that electronic, kidney that is just like a little knapsack that you have on the side of and does everything a kidney does. And, you can go and do about anything you want to do and not have to worry about rejection. That's the day I can't wait for, but it's still, it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, well, they're still playing with the pig. Okay. They're still playing with the pig. I mean, look, I only wish people would, look further into living donors. And, if you are, and it's not for everybody, and I'm not preaching that everybody should be a living donor. But, if, the criteria is tough, we know that for a living donor. I mean, you have to be under a certain BMI. You have to have all of your numbers have to check out lab-wise. I mean, there's so many things that go on. But if you are of the quality of health to be a living donor, you only need one kidney to live.
Now I'm going to throw another curve into that also, because you were looking to get a insurance policy. You found out that you had kidney problems, needed dialysis, ended up getting a kidney. This is the same thing. If you go to donate a kidney or a portion of your liver, you go through so much testing. And I have talked to people that have had, people ready to donate, and they've went through the process, and they learned themselves that they had a disease that if they wouldn't have caught when they did, they may not be here today. So you can also look at it that way. You're going to get one heck of a checkup, and it's not going to cost you anything, because whoever you're donating the kidney to, their insurance is going to pay for the whole thing. And so you're going to get the greatest physical of your life.
Yeah, and Kaiser was amazing. They paid for everything for me and everything for my sister for 3 years at UCLA because they have a contract with UCLA. Mm-hmm. So they cover everything.
And like your sister said,
paid not $1.
And your sister told you how well they check you before they let you donate.
Oh yeah, they saw a spot. They did a CT X-ray of her chest, and they saw a spot on her lung, but it was with contrast. So they said, let's do it again. They did it again without contrast, and they realized that the spot was residual of the contrast. I mean, that's how detailed these people get.
Yes.
I mean, they look at your toenails. They want to make sure you don't have an ingrown toenail or you can't donate. I mean, it's insane. I mean, but, I was very lucky. She also had a great support system. She's divorced, but she had a great support system with her son, her son's girlfriend, and one of her very best friends. And just super, super supportive and super fortunate, because the donor also needs to have a support system.
Yes.
That's also, and my poor husband was split between, my sister and myself, but he managed somehow. So yeah. And it's built a different relationship for my husband with my sister, as well as my son, because they realize that she saved me.
Awesome.
Literally. But yeah, it is funny though that you say that, how it all comes around. And, when my sister called me when I was in Alaska and said, you are the most generous, giving, loving human, and I'm going to do this for you. And then when it goes back to how I found out I had this disease, was because I was trying to do good for the world. I wanted my gift to go on after my passing, my donation. And that meant so much to me. Yet, in turn, by doing good, it also saved my life. Which
amazing story.
It's its own blessing, I guess, right? So, my son says to me one day when I was right before I went back to the hospital for rejection, he's going to be 21 in March. And he says to me, what's the point of being a good person? And I said, excuse me? He said, well, Mom, you've always been a good person and you always do good for everybody. He goes, and now you're going to spend the next 8 days all the way through Thanksgiving in the hospital. How is that something that a good person deserves? And I said to him, if I hadn't been a good person, I probably might not be standing here today. I said, but because I was a good person, I was fortunate enough to find out that I had this disease, and we were able to get it taken care, well, not get taken care of, but, help the problem. I don't want to even say the word fix the problem, but, just have knowledge of the problem.
And to better your life. I know it's hard to say these words, transplant patients, because we do take the drugs and we do have the ups and downs, but it is a blessing to our life because, we're able to enjoy so much more time with our family than maybe we wouldn't have been able to if we wouldn't have had the organ donation.
100%, 100%. I was able last year when my son moved back, he goes to school in Boca in Florida, and I wasn't allowed. I was too sick in August to get on the plane and take him back to school. The doctor said, I really don't want you leaving LA. And I said, okay. And he, sophomore year, moved himself in and did the whole thing himself. And this year, for his junior year, where he has his own an apartment and whatever, and he was so excited. The most exciting part for him was that I was on that airplane with him, moving him back to school.
Well, if you're ever in Florida again, make sure you look me up. I'm here in the Orlando area.
I definitely will. Yes, we do come there a couple times a year.
Because I'll tell you what, your husband and my wife could get together, and they could tell some stories of being our caregivers just by hearing you and knowing what my wife has went through. Oh yeah, they could share some stories. In fact, that might be a good podcast to get those both on someday.
That would be. You should do a caregiver podcast.
I've done that. And I did one with her also. So I did one with her as my caregiver.
Yes. Caregivers. It definitely takes a. I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to put a fantasy world on it. But yes, having your spouse as a caregiver definitely, and going through all of the transplant situation, the dialysis, the diagnosis, the whole thing, the medications, the rejection, all of it, it definitely takes a toll on a marriage.
And then when we are like, at our worst, feeling our worst and thinking the worst, they're the one that, gives us the uplifting words and encouragement. And they're unfortunately, they're not, they're the most important part, but somehow in the whole situation, they kind of become the back burner when really they're the light that shines through the whole situation.
Yeah. And when you're on, thousands of milligrams of prednisone, who do you yell at? Yourself.
Oh yeah, there's some horror stories. Those high doses of prednisone, and you're just ready to kill whoever walks in the room.
Oh, one quick story, and then I'll let you go. But he and my best friend, when I was in the hospital for the 8 days with rejection and during Thanksgiving, they thought they were going to be really sweet, and they brought rummy tile and chocolate chip cookies and pizza. And they came to my hospital room that night, and I started to cry. And I started to yell at my husband. I said, "Why would you buy this pizza? You know how much I hate this pizza." Like, the poor guy was just trying to be nice. And here I am yelling at him that he brought the wrong pizza.
Well,
I mean,
not to be
now
sexist.
we can laugh about it.
Not to be sexist, but I really believe when I was on prednisone, I kind of had an idea now what you ladies go through during PMS. I go, oh my God, it's turned me into having PMS.
Oh, I know. My husband, no. Me and prednisone, yeah. And he said, especially in the beginning, when you're on really high doses right after the surgery, he said, I would ask for something, he'd bring it, and then I'd look at him and I'd say, "Why'd you get this? I didn't ask for this." He'd say, "Yeah, he did." Yeah.
Well, Ronna,
yeah, it definitely takes patience on both sides, but.
Well, Ronna, I appreciate you for coming on, and I wish you the very best of luck, and hope you get good words tomorrow and things get straightened out for you. I appreciate you sharing your story on the Gift of Life. Anything else that you want to, as we leave you, that you want to maybe tell our audience?
Well, again, if you're thinking about it, don't think about it and just donate. See if you are healthy enough. See if you are a match for somebody, because there are so many of us that need a kidney.
Thank you, Ronna, for sharing your story, as we wish you the very best of luck in the future with your transplant. Be sure to join us each week for a new heartfelt episode of Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. And if you have a transplant story, email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook. Also, don't forget to like and share this episode. And we appreciate if you'd give us that 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Another podcast you might enjoy with myself and my old radio partner, Bill Stevens. It's BJ and Bill, the podcast, all on the Podcast Playground Network. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom. Thank you so much for being a part of our journey, and remind us all to appreciate each and every day and to treasure the extraordinary gift of life.